particle moving in a circular path completes 7.5 revolutions in 9 seconds. So we have to calculate its angular velocity. We know that angular velocity omega equals to 2 pi by t. So it says that in 9 seconds it completes 7.5 revolutions. That means it completes 2 pi radians 7.5 times in 9 seconds. So from this we would get an answer of 5.24 rads per second. So the answer is B. A moving pion decays into particle y and z. The decay occurs at point x, so this is the point x, here the decay occurs. The y goes in this direction and the z goes in this direction. The particle detector and the tracks observed are shown. Which of the following is a valid conclusion from these tracks? A. Momentum has not been conserved. No. Physics generally, momentum is always conserved. B. Pion is a neutral particle. Yes, this might be correct, since during any particle decay, at least in our syllabus, in the physics IL syllabus, the pion or any decaying particle must have an initial neutral charge. So this is a correct valid conclusion that the particle is a neutral particle. C. Y and Z have different masses. So yes, this could have been a valid conclusion from these tracks, since we can see that the Y and Z have different curvatures. Like if we draw a circle like this, the radius here would be greater than the radius here. Considering it would continue to move in circular motion, it would look something like this. But we do not know the velocity of the y and z. So maybe because of this reason, this may not be a valid conclusion that y and z have different masses. D. Z is a negatively charged particle. So for this, we do not have sufficient information, because if the question said that the magnetic field line is acting into the page and we know the direction, then by Fleming's left hand rule we could have determined whether it is a negatively charged or positively charged. So this is not the answer, since enough information is not given. So the answer is B. Number 3. Select the row of the table that correctly identifies what happens in an elastic collision. So we have momentum, we have total energy and kinetic energy. So in any type of collision, we maintain the law of conservation of momentum and the law of conservation of energy. So in any type of collision, the momentum and total energy is always conserved, but in the kinetic energy there is a catch. The catch is, in an elastic collision the kinetic energy is conserved, and in an inelastic collision the kinetic energy is not conserved. So here, in an elastic collision or any type of collision, momentum is conserved, total energy is conserved, but kinetic energy is not conserved. So the answer for this is B. Number 4. A current carrying wire is placed into a magnetic field. If the magnetic force experienced by the wire balances the weight of the wire will float. The direction of the magnetic field is from west to east. For the wire to float, it is placed. So let me try to draw the scenario diagrammatically. So let us see here with a top view, like we are viewing it from the top. So this is north, south, west, east. It is telling that the direction of the magnetic field is from west to east. By the way, there is a 3D explanation, but it is easier to view this in 2D. So the direction of the magnetic field is from west to east. So the direction is this way. This means that there is a magnet of north here and south here. So the magnetic field is going from north to south, so west to east. And a current carrying wire is placed into the magnetic field. The current carrying wire would be placed like this. Always be perpendicular, since the force acting on a current carrying conductor is F equals to BIL sine theta, where sine should always be 90 degree or close to 90 degree for maximum force to be experienced. So we have to find out the direction of the current flow from north to south or south to north. So this is quite simple. Again the Fleming's left hand rule. So by using this, we can determine the direction of current. So since the magnetic field is moving from west to east, so our index finger would point rightwards, and since our wire has to float, the force will be out of the page. Since we are looking at a top view, is important. We are looking at a top view, so the force will be towards us. The force that is going away from us is the weight. So the thumb will be pointing out of the page towards us. So by Fleming's left-hand rule, we will see that the middle finger will be pointing from north to south, that is downwards. So C is the answer. Number 5. Two capacitors of capacitance 100 μF and 10 μF are charged so that they store the same amount of energy. The potential difference PD across the 1000 μF capacitor is V1 and the PD across the 10 μF capacitor is V2. The value of V1 by V2 whole square is. So this says that it contains the same amount of energy. So we know that the energy of a capacitor is given by half CV square. So by this we can write, since the energies are the same, we can equate half into C1 into V1 squared equals to half into C2 into V2 squared. So half into C1, potential difference C1 is 100 μF. So into 1000 μF into V1 square equals to half into 10 μF into V square, V2 square. So if we find the ratio, V1 square by V2 square would be so 1 into 10 to the power minus 2. So the answer to this question is B. Number 6. The diagram shows the path of an alpha particle that is being deflected by the nucleus. So this is an alpha particle going in this way, and as it is going nearer to the nucleus, it is being deflected and it is going back in this direction. The point P is a point of closest approach of the alpha particle to the nucleus. Which statement about the alpha particle on this path is correct? So option A, its acceleration is least at P. Pretty interesting point. So its acceleration may be the greatest at point P, since we know that the force acting is K into Q1 into Q2 by R square. So when the R square is minimum, the force acting is maximum, since the distance between P and the nucleus is minimum at this point. So when the force acting on it is maximum, since we know the Newton's first law, that maximum force would correspond to maximum acceleration provided that the mass is constant. So the acceleration might have been the max at P. Really interesting, right? Part B, its speed is least at point P. Yes, this is the correct answer. You know, here the speed is the least. Let us go back to unit 1. Let's see here. If we consider only the horizontal component of the velocity, then we would see that at this point the horizontal velocity is actually 0, and this particle would have been traveling in this direction if the nucleus was removed and P was at this, the particle was at this point. So at this point the horizontal component is actually 0. So the speed is least at P. The speed is not 0 because it has vertical component here, but the horizontal component here is 0. And the horizontal component starts increasing as it passes the point P and keeps increasing. The total energy is greatest at C. No, this is not the answer. When the speed is the least, the total energy cannot be the greatest. Same reason for D. So the answer is B. Which of the following is not a unit of electric field strength? So the mark scheme says that the answer is A. So let's prove B, C and D. So we have F equals to EQ. So rearranging it, we would get F equals to F by Q, where E is the electric field strength, F is the force, and Q is the charge. So E equals to force. Force is in newtons and Q is in charge coulombs. So Newton per coulomb. So this answer matches with D. We also know that since E equals to F by Q, we also know that Q equals to IT. So we can replace the IT here, F by IT, F is in newtons, I is in ampere, and T is in seconds. So this would be Newton per ampere second. So this proves number C. Let's look at B, how we can prove that. We know an equation that kinetic energy is equals to VQ. So we have this, and we have another formula that V equals to ED. So we can substitute ED here. EK, the kinetic energy, is equals to the electric field strength into distance into charge. So if we make E the subject, we would get EK, the kinetic energy, divided by distance into charge. So E would be the kinetic energy. Energy is joule, distance is meter, and charge is coulomb. So we will have joule per meter coulomb. So this proves part B. So the answer is A. A capacitor is charged to a potential difference of 12 volts and stores a charge of 600 mu coulomb. What would the potential difference across the plates have to be in order to the capacitor to store 50% more charge? So here we have the formula Q equals to CV. Let's find out C here. C equals to Q by V. So capacitance would be, the charge is 600 mu and the voltage is 12. So the capacitance is 600 divided by 12 is 50 mu. So this will be 50 mu coulomb per volt. So we have a capacitance here. We know that since Q equals to CV, the C is constant. And here it says what would the potential difference across the plates have to be in order for the capacitance to store 50% more charge. 50% more charge of this is 900 mu coulomb. So again we have Q equals to CV. We use Q as 900 mu equals to 50 mu into V. So in this way V would be 900 mu by 50 mu. So V would have a value of 18 volts. So the answer is C. Number 9. Which of the following is not a valid conclusion from the Rutherford's alpha scattering experiment? Part A. The nucleus contains most of the mass of the atom. Yes, this is a valid conclusion since very few particles got deflected by a large angle, for example more than 90 degrees. So this is true. Part B. The nucleus contains protons. This statement is true. The nucleus does contain protons and neutrons, but it is not derived from the experiment itself. Part C. So the answer is B. Part C. The nucleus must be charged. Yes, this is correct. If the nucleus was not charged, then there would not have been any deflection. Part D. The nucleus is very small compared to the atom. So for part D, this is also correct since a very few particles got deflected by a large angle. So since the size is very small, the probability of the alpha particle colliding with the atom is really low. So this proves that the nucleus is very small compared to the atom. So the answer is B. Number 10. A particle Z has kinetic energy E and momentum P. A second particle has twice the mass and half the momentum of particle Z. The kinetic energy of X is, so we have to write the kinetic energy of X in terms of the kinetic energy of Z. So the kinetic energy of Z is Ke equals to momentum P, so P square by 2m. M is mass, so 2m. So it says that the particle, this is Kz, so we now have to determine the Kex. So Kex would be P square. It says that half the momentum of particle Z, so P by 2 square divided by 2 into m. M is doubled, so 2 into 2m. So this would be P square by 4 divided by 4m. So P square by 16m, which would be 1 by 8 P square by 2m. We are writing 1 by 8 P square by 2m because we have to switch this with this. So we would have 1 by 8, since Ek, Kz is actually E. So this would be 1 by 80, so E by 8. So the answer to this question is C.